Is your fear and people's hearsay stopping your son or daughter making it as a professional football player? So what do I mean by that with hearsay and your fear? Well, let's start about mentality. To make it in any sport, you need to have a really strong mentality. But we've got to be careful, especially in places like Australia and the USA. We've got to be careful if we lead into any decisions we're going to make for our sons or daughters around the game of football, if we're going in with positivity and a growth mindset, or if we're going in with negativity based off previous or prior negative experiences. And also, are you listening to people who are not qualified to talk about this? We've spoke about this before on previous episodes, and we're just going to delve in for the next 15 to 20 minutes because one of the questions that we had posted online was some of the bad experiences you guys have had at Clubland in both the USA and in Australia. And we're hopefully going to help you with this over the next 15 to 20 minutes. So if we're thinking about everything as mentality, and the best example I can give you in this, and we've got to think about professions. When you walk into a dentist, you don't even question or ask if that dentist is qualified. You just take it as a given because when you walk through them doors and these receptions are shiny and white and beautiful and you get greeted by the receptionist and they introduce you to the dentist and you sit down in the chair. You just take it because they're qualified, because no one that I know of in Australia, the USA, has gone into a dentist chair and ended up with a really poor or a bad outcome. And if they did, it's only a very, very small percentage. The problem that we've got to look at is that when you're in that dentist chair, at no point would you stop and say, wait there, I think you're doing the filling wrong. Because Paul, who actually does the sausage sizzle at our club, actually said you don't do fillings that way, it's a different way. Because you know you're with a professional and you know the job's going to get done 99.9% of the time correctly and properly, and you've got that level of trust. Unfortunately, the problem that we've got developed in places like the USA and Australia is in a lot of clubs, you pay a fee for service, and when you're paying that money, you're expecting a really, really good service. Now, I can see most of you at home, 99% will be nodding your head and agreeing that you don't actually believe you're getting value for money. I don't know why parents are not asking these questions. If you had concerns around your dentist and you're getting all these shocking stories that things aren't going well in the dentist, you would start to ask, do you have insurance? Are you qualified? How many times have you been in the job? So we wanted to address it this way, and we're going to make some notes on the board for you to think about. Now, if you're a family and you're paying $300-400 a year for your football, then the chances are those fees are just enough to cover insurance, kit and equipment, and the chances are your son or daughter is going to be working with a volunteer. However, if you're in the USA or in Australia where we have systems like SAP and NPL, the chances are some of you guys are going to be paying in excess of $3,000 to $3,500 a year. So because you're paying such a high amount of money, you need to start asking these questions. And if you're not happy with the service that you're getting, you need to start asking these questions. And these are some of the things that I'd be looking for at a minimum. The first thing I'd be asking my club is, if I'm going to be paying this amount of money, what qualification does the coach hold and who is the coach? So first thing is, who is the coach? If the club can't tell you who the coach is, then straight away, that should be a red flag and it should be a warning. And you shouldn't be handing over any money and signing up to any clubs unless they can actually tell you with confidence who the coach is. The next question you should be asking is, what qualifications does the coach hold? And for me, if you're paying anything in the region of $3,000 to $3,500, and most teams roughly have about 15, 16 players in the squad, that means across those players, there's roughly around about that is getting generated by that club per team. So for me, I would think qualifications is quite important. You would be expecting for a squad to be contributing and a group of parents contributing up to $50,000, you would think at least 50 to 60% of the budget is going towards the coach to ensure that we're going to get the right outcome. So based on that, whether you're in the USA, you're in Australia, or anywhere else around the world, you would be expecting at a minimum an A licensed coach. And if they're not A license, B license, but working towards an A license would make me happy as a parent. Now, what I mean by that is if they've already completed the B license, but they're going to be working towards their A license and they're already registered on the course, that would be a prerequisite. Also, one of the prerequisites must be to ask the question, how many players has the particular coach developed for state or national or professional football clubs? So we should be looking to see that they've actually coached and developed players who've played state, national, or have gone on and played for a club pro or a professional club. Now, I would say, again, if you're handing over $3,000 to $3,500, $4,000 a year as a fee for service to a club, no matter where you are in the world, if you're paying for your football, you should be getting a coach with this caliber. Now, if you're not, the next question we need to be asking, rather than sitting around and paying this money and having a bad experience, not enjoying the experience, but year on and year out, just keep going back because you feel like you've got no option. As a group of parents, why don't you get together and ask the question, where is this amount of money going? Why is 50 or 60% of it not being allocated to the coaches? Now, I know from my experience, I chose to come out of the club system in Australia, where I currently reside and live. Because whenever I asked those questions of the clubs, they could never ever give me an answer. Or they would say, oh, it goes towards getting the grass cut, or it goes towards the fees. But I know that the fees for a particular team in any age group, as an example, in Australia, it's SAP or MPL level, only equates to $5,000 to $10,000 for a group of 15 or 16 players for the whole year, running costs. And then kit and equipment is potentially maybe an extra $5,000 on top. So there's still a hole of about $30,000 to $35,000. Where's that money going? I don't know. Only you guys as parents can ask that. But for me, you should be asking these three areas. Now, if you get those three ticks, and I know there's a lot of good clubs out there now in Australia, and there's a lot of good clubs in the US and around other parts of the world, they will hit these ticks. If your club doesn't hit these ticks and they're not giving you the answers you want, my suggestion would be go and find a club who've got these three ticks. And that's what you should be expecting. It's no different when you go in a dentist and you're paying $1,000 to have 2 fillings done. You want it done by a professional. It's exactly the same when you're paying the money for your son or daughter to be developed as a football player. You expect a certain level for the amount of money that you're paying. So my advice would be, think about these three areas and start to question in clubland, where is the 45 to 50 grand going? Start to ask the questions, because you know what? You've got a right to know, because it's a fee for service and you're a member at the club and you've got a right to know where that money's going. And if it's not going towards a coach who's got an A license or a B license at a minimum, and it's not going to a coach who's developed a state, a national or professional players in the past, then who's it going to? And why are you paying $3,500, $4,000 to be at one of these top clubs in the USA or in Australia or wherever you're based, why are you paying this amount of money and that's not what you're getting in return? If you went again in the dentist and you only got half your filling done, you wouldn't pay the dentist $1,000. You wouldn't pay them $1. You'd demand to get the filling done properly, and then you'd pay in full once it was done. So this is the question I've got to ask to you. You need to be asking these questions, and you need to be ensuring that you're thinking about your son or daughter's experience. Again, if you're involved in a community-based club and you're only paying $300-400 a year, then definitely you will not expect to get this because they don't have this type of money in the budget. But I'm challenging every mum and dad out there, until we start challenging the clubs and asking where the money goes, then we're not going to get better players, and we're not going to develop national players, and we're not going to keep players in the country. The players that are talented are normally 9 times out of 10 the players who are going to private academies, the players who are working with private one-on-one coaches, and the mums and dads are having to spend a hell of a lot more money to get them to where they need to be. And there's no surprises that those players don't stay in their countries. They don't want to play in the MLS. They don't want to play in the A-League. They will want to go to Europe instead. They'll want to go into the UK. And that's because the opportunity is nil and void, and it's very frustration. And there's a high frustration level from parents. So again, you've got a responsibility. If you're paying that amount of money, you need to really start asking the questions. Now, one of the big things that is quite contentious, and a lot of people get upset when I say it, but we've got a bit of a problem, not just in Australia, but in the USA. And this is more for the people who are involved at the clubs at the top level. The model doesn't work. All of our clubs, especially around Australia, are 99.9% run and operated by volunteers. And this is the problem. Volunteers are great. Volunteers are great to cut the grass. Volunteers are great to mark the lines. Volunteers are great to work in the shop and sell drinks and raise money for the club by selling food, sausages, hamburgers, whatever it may be. But the problem we've got people involved in football who are non-football people making footballing decisions. And this is one of the biggest problems that we've got around the globe, externally outside of Europe and the UK. It's causing us major issues. The problem we've got is you've got presidents and vice presidents who admittedly give up 50, 60 hours at a time. But most of the ones I've met over the years, they let you know it as well. They will tell you how many hours their week they donate. And the minute you try, as a football person, to try and get a football point across and try and make a football decision, they won't let you, because the hands are tied by the vice president, the committee members, all these other parents who've got interests within the club to ensure that their son or daughter is normally in the top team. And that's the sad thing with football. And I'm being brutally honest because people won't speak up about it. But I will. I will speak up about it. Again, this is not every club, but the majority of the clubs that run really well are not running at 99.9% volunteers. The clubs that are running super well in Australia have probably got 20 to 30% of the staff in paid positions. So again, the challenge goes out to the clubs. Start working towards a model where the money you've got coming in, you're trying to hire people to run the club for you in paid positions. The beauty of having people in paid positions are they can be the ones who put 50, 60 hours in a week. You can hire the right people who can make football decisions. And there's a lot of people in Australia who are born in Australia, and there's a lot of people who are born outside of Australia who live and work and reside here as citizens, who are very good at making footballing decisions. They have got all the qualifications. They have coached players at high levels. And there's a lot of people in Australia who've also worked in some of the best leagues around the world. These are the people who clubs in Australia should be bending over backwards to go and employ. And not employ on $30,000 a year to be a technical director. Because I've been privy to this over the years, and there's a lot of people out there now who are very undervalued and get $30,000 to $40,000 as the technical director and don't get given what they deserve. They get run into the ground, they have to do 70, 80 hours a week, and then there's no wonder why that technical director doesn't last anything longer than a year. Again, there's not too many clubs out in Australia who's had a technical director for longer than a year or two. And the ones that have been there for longer than a year or two are, again, the ones who are in that, not in the 99.9%, they're probably in that 20%. They're the ones who are paying the TDs properly, they've got more paid staff and paid positions, and there's less volunteers running the clubs. So if we want to start to bring the game up in places like the USA and Australia, we've got to have more paid people in positions, and we've got to have more football and people making football and decisions, not non-football and people making football and decisions. Because again, you wouldn't have Tony, who runs the car wash, dropping into your dentist to say, oh, sorry, Sarah, your dentist is away today, but I'm going to sort the film for you. You would be out of that chair as quick as you can, because you only want the person who's qualified to repair your tooth. You should only want the person who's qualified to make football decisions to actually develop your son or daughter for the future, or to be running your football club. So this is what we need to remember. We need to remember, whether we like it or not, football around the world now, we're not in the 1980s anymore. It's a business. And as you can see from the money being generated, I'm aware of clubs in Australia and the USA who have income generation of over $2 million a year. And you're telling me you can't have 5 or 6 paid positions and people working to KPIs and people who are football people making football and decisions? You're kidding me and everyone else in the country if you think that you're telling me where this money's going. We need to start putting this money back into the game. We need to start putting this money back into clubs, and we need to start putting it back into developing world-class football players right here in Australia and in places like the USA. So maybe in 5 to 10 years' time, players don't need to go to Europe or to the UK, because it is a competitive environment. They are being developed by football and people. And also, maybe you won't have coaches like Ange Postecoglou, who feels the need to leave Australia to go and work in the Premier League. Who knows, one day, if we start somewhere and we aim high, we could end up with a league as big as the Premier League one day. But whilst we're operating down here with volunteers, we're never ever going to get there. And that's the outcome that we're always going to be working and that we're always going to be coming from. Now, another quick example I'll give you. As most of you know, we run 3 football programs all around the world, including places like the USA and Australia. I had a father come up to me and he was really, really keen to join us on our professional player pathway. And our professional player pathway is a 4-year program where we take boys and girls from the bottom of the journey and all the way through to get them an opportunity to go and train and trial and hopefully sign for a club back in the UK or Europe so they can lead their dreams in professional football. Now, we had a dad who signed up for the program with his son, and I had this other dad telling me how good his son was, and his son was so much better than this other boy. And I said, well, that's quite exciting. I said, because anyone who's really talented, boys or girls, it doesn't take 4 years. Sometimes it could be done in 2 years. It could be done in 2.5. Now, this particular dad and his son, they didn't register and sign up for the program. I then discovered over the next couple of weeks, this particular dad was posting stuff on social media. He was having a go at the program. He was saying it was no good. He was saying it was all a scam. The same father then reached out to me 12 months later when this other boy, who wasn't as good as his son apparently, had not only been on the program for over 12 months, had not only been over to the UK for trials, but also had been offered contracts at 2 professional clubs. And he was very upset and wanted to demand and to know why he had made it and his son, who's far better player, hadn't. And I went on to explain to him that because unfortunately he just trusted in the system here, of which I didn't have too much faith or belief in for many, many reasons, and we could do a whole episode on why. But I said to him, if you would have trusted in me, someone who's qualified with the highest qualifications on the globe with UEFA. I've got runs on the board and developed players in the Premier League. And we've got so many success stories now coming out of the US, Australia, and other parts of the world who've been on our programme, who are now on pro scholarships back in Europe and the UK. But he decided not to take that advice and he decided to listen to other people. He then asked, could he join the programme? And I said, yeah, of course, you can join the programme. I said, but the opportunity that we presented to you a year ago, that's not there anymore. And the scholarships we were giving away at the moment is not at the level it was at a year ago. The price has actually increased. So he then went on to get really, really angry. And then he walked off and then he decided he doesn't want to go with the programme. Roll on 6 more months later, he's now signed up and paid for the programme. And we're now helping him and his son achieve his dream. And we will get there. The whole point I'm trying to get to with this, and this particular father actually told me, he'd actually listened to 2 other parents who told him that we were some sort of a scam and it was a fad and it wasn't a true opportunity. He then come in the room and witnessed everything we had to show him. We showed him all the testimonials and the results, but he still listened to 2 naysayers. So the point we're trying to get to, are you going to listen to other people with hearsay and let them decide if your son or daughter is going to make it in sport or in anything in life? Or are you actually going to make the decision? And are you going to help them? And are you going to make the decision as a parent and actually make it based off your own facts and your own information? And don't actually listen to other people. My advice and what I would do for my 2 daughters would be I would make the decision for them and I wouldn't listen to naysayers. I've learnt my lesson. I used to be one of these people. So please, please, please do not be listening to naysayers. So the final question that I want to finish on for this short episode, and I hope you've enjoyed it and took some good information. Are you keen to take a little bit of the short-term pain and actually sometimes just take a leap of faith and trust in someone when they're showing you all the qualifications, when they're showing you their experience, when they're showing you the testimonials? Or are you going to suffer long-term pain like the parent we just spoke about, who's going to keep listening to the other parents and the other people who are not qualified in football? And if you start going out with that short-term pain mentality, that it might cost you a little bit at the beginning with that pain, but longer term you're going to be so much happier because at least you know you've given it a go. So guys, a big thank you for listening. Hopefully some of this was helpful. What I would like to ask is that you like, you comment and you share these posts. And if you've got any questions that relate to this, please drop it into the comments and we will get back to you straight away. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed it and we look forward to speaking to you on our next episode at the Raymond Wood.